Hi there, it's John here and welcome to this week's book club. And as you can see, I'm at home rather than in the cafe that I normally do my video blogs for this, and no people rushing by at the side and all of life kind of going by, and me talking to you because I had a meeting directly after the book club today, so it's a wee bit later in the day and I'm trying to just do this with some available light coming in through the window before the light goes, because it goes dark very early now with it being winter. And it's just so lovely to get back to the book group. I really missed it. Been off for a couple of weeks, and yeah, it was half term here in the UK for schools, so they take a break for a week, and then I couldn't do last week because of some personal stuff, so it was just great to be back. And it was interesting because I wanted to, now that the group's been going for a little while, I wanted to sort of try some very different territory with them. And it was definitely the day of the challenge read, things that people would probably not have come across at all, and yet two highly respected writers, and that usually we look at a short story first, and then we kind of have a look at a poem. This week, instead of a short story, I chose a piece of non-fiction by a very well-known non-fiction writer. But rather than having the poem second, we had the poem first. And the poet I've chosen for this week is the Syrian poet Adonis, who is probably one of the best known poets in the world. His work is hugely popular, and you hear his name kind of rumoured for prizes here and prizes there, and sometimes they come off and sometimes they don't. Maybe one year there'll be the Nobel Prize. This particular poem is called The Desert, and this is actually not the whole poem. This is an excerpt. It was written or is based on happenings from 1982 during the Beirut War, and it's written as a series of shorter pieces that fit together in a kind of diaristic sort of way. In fact, it says A Diary of Beirut 1982. And the book that it's from is called The Pages of Day and Night, so you might want to kind of grab that. I'll put a link down below if you want to have a look at that. And really the book is about day and night, and so this section that I'd like to read for you from The Desert is probably the most night part of it. Night happens. These are papers he saved to write on, but the writing never came. Night happens on a bed, the bed of a lover, but there is no lover. Night happens without a sound, in clouds of smoke. Night happens while someone carries ants and rabbits in his hands. Night happens while the walls shudder and the curtains reveal everything. Night happens, but no one listens. The stars are mute, and the last trees by the wall have forgotten what the wind said to them. Night happens while the wind whispers at the window. Night happens while lights try to shine and a man lies naked. Night happens, revealing through a window two women embracing. Night happens, and the whimsical moon would complain, if it could, in the language of lovers. Night happens while a man alone and without friends fills his glass from a pitcher of wine. And so this section continues using that phrase, night happens, night happens, night happens, and then the image, you know. And at first the group just kind of sat with it. As I said in an earlier video, there's a bit of a thing in England with poetry, in that we've been taught in school that a poem is a puzzle to be figured out. And obviously that's not the case, as you know. That a poem can be imagistic. It can just be what it is, just that picture sitting there. It can work on an emotional level. It works on a musical level. It may be abstract and not trying to actually show you something, but just placing something in front of you that will come into you in a very different way. And it's not the same in other parts of the world. You know, poetry is taken in a very different way in some places, and is received sort of more directly into the body. What I love about this is that we're aware of the war going on outside. We're aware of the bombardment and him being stuck in this place alone, and he's kind of looking around at the few things that he owns, at the tools of the writer sitting on the table, at his wine that he's got from somewhere, and these are his companions. And we don't know if the night will end. And even, you know, something that we kind of discussed as we sat for a while, and the poem sort of began to sink into us, and we talked about the musicality and about the images, and slowly it kind of started offering itself up. And we need to do this. We need to be patient. It's not just read it. What does that mean? I've understood that now. Boom, next thing. You know, look how far we've got on that. That doesn't work at all for us as human beings. This poem requires us to sit with it. And if we don't want to, of course, that's absolutely fine. We don't have to, you know. But I think we're poorer for that, for moving on too quickly. So as it sank in, as the images sort of started to reveal themselves to people, the last trees by the wall have forgotten what the wind has said to them. The bed with no lover in, the writing not coming. One observation is that, you know, we treat night as the end of the day. You know, we've been working all day. This is when we're not in a war zone, and we've been working all day, and the night comes, and maybe we can rest and be with our friends and the people that we love and eat our meal. And night has come here, and the missiles are still falling. The war continues. What if night is not an end? What if you don't know, you know, when it will end, and how you will get to the next day? So I'll leave you with that. It's maybe not a happy poem, but it's certainly beautiful, and it's certainly worth anybody's time. And then, as I said, we instead of going for a short story, I chose a piece of what we might call narrative nonfiction, which uses sort of literary elements. And I couldn't have planned this better in a way, in fact, that I didn't plan it. But I kind of actually scheduled all of my pieces of writing about 3 months ago so that the bookshop could get the books in for people if they wanted to sort of buy them. And from the moment I took on this job of running a reading group, I knew this writer would be in here. And I said, I say to the group regularly that I choose pieces that are not necessarily my favourites. I choose things because of their literary merit, or because of their reputation, or because of the kind of the name of the writer sometimes, just so that we can actually have a look, because sometimes we'll know a name and we won't have read that person, you know, and maybe it's worth a look, or maybe it's not worth a look, so we take a look to see whether it's worth a look or not. And so this is Joan Didion, who I'm sure you've heard of. She became hugely well known for her memoir on grief called The Year of Magical Thinking. her husband and her daughter died within 18 months of each other. And the funny thing about being a writer is when there's nothing else, you know, when you don't know how to take even the next breath, you write. That's what writers do. You write. Not always in times of pain, but we know that writing is always there. And Didion wrote, and she wrote, and she wrote, and out came the Year of Magical Thinking, which is too much for me. It's too sad for me. It's a beautiful thing, but it's not one book that I would wish to revisit. But if you are dealing with grief or difficulty, maybe there's something cathartic in there. But I wanted to go back in time a little bit, back to before Joan Didion was Joan Didion, in that kind of gigantic sense. And what's astonishing is that just in this last week, Netflix have put a documentary up about her, made by her nephew Griffin Dunn, called The Centre Will Not Hold. So if you have Netflix, and it's not like for me to do a commercial, but if you have that and you're interested in this, then, or you're interested in this writer's life, then take a look. The piece that we looked at by Joan was called On Self-Respect, and was actually published in Vogue in 1961. So she was 26 at the time. One of our group figured out. She's 82 now. So had we not have had that realization that she was 26 when she wrote this, we would probably imagined an 82-year-old having written this, because she's seen now as a kind of a grand dame of non-fiction writing. And there's no way to look at non-fiction seriously without her name coming up. Let me read you a little bit of this, and then we'll have a bit more of a chat. To do without self-respect, on the other hand, is to be an unwilling audience of one to an interminable home movie that documents one's own failings, both real and imagined, with fresh footage spliced in for each screening. There's the glass you broke in anger. There's the hurt on X's face. Watch now, this next scene. The night Y came back from Houston. See how you muff this one. To live without self-respect is to lie awake some night, beyond the reach of warm milk, phenobarbital, and the sleeping hand on the coverlet, counting up the sins of commission and omission, the trust betrayed, the promises subtly broken, the gifts wasted through sloth or cowardice or carelessness. However long we postpone it, we eventually lie down in that notorious uncomfortable bed, the one we make ourselves. Whether or not we sleep in it depends, of course, on whether or not we respect ourselves. So this piece too, this was the challenge piece, not the Adonis, but Joan Didion's On Self-Respect was the challenge piece, because the section I've shared with you is sort of the clear insight that she's capable of. What is interesting is that it alternates between clear passages like this and passages which make cultural references which are specifically American, which are literary, which are about film, which are about American tycoons who would later become bankrupt, and without being American, without knowing those references, it seems one would not make their way through this. You almost have to kind of tear those things away to get down to the kind of the meat of what she's saying. So this is not to put you off, but it's to make you aware that it's an unfortunate failing of writers sometimes, that and artists of all kinds, that we believe that the sphere of the cultural is a way to have identity. I certainly see this as something that could be edited further. I'm saying this about Joan Didion. Mind you, I would edit Shakespeare if I was honest. You know, those sonnets, I could see how to make a much leaner book out of that, quite honestly. You know, there's 100 of them that would kind of go like this. But anyway, let's... and that's not out of ego, it's just wanting the best writing. So here we have this insightful 26-year-old with this opportunity to, you know, be in Vogue, writing about something that's a really important subject, respecting ourselves, what it means to have self-respect, what it means to not have self-respect. And the route she takes with it is really, really interesting. So this is available on Vogue's website. It's also, of course, in the book which made her famous at first, which is Slouching Towards Bethlehem. And whether or not this piece is to your liking, I'll post a link for this down below as well, and I'll post a link for the book. Whether or not you get on with this and its cultural references and so on, you cannot get past the kind of the big essay in this book, which is Slouching Towards Bethlehem itself, which looks at, with a cool eye, at the kind of the hippie scene in the late 60s, looking at the drugs and the people around that, and with her clear journalistic nonfiction eye. So I would really kind of recommend that. So yeah, I'll love you and leave you. As you can see, it's going dark, so I want to edit this and get it online. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel so you stay in the loop with things that are coming up. I promise that I will make one of my more regular video blogs for my more regular viewers, the non-book group viewers, in the next little while, because it's been so long since I've made one of those pieces, and I've been missing it recently, and there's been some things coming up about meditation and the need to connect to the heart and the kind of the work that's coming next year. So I'll share that as soon as I can, I hope. Yeah, please check these out. I hope you have a great day, whatever it is that you're doing, and let me wish you well. Take care.